So the title of section 57 says author's special right. Now, the special right that the act is talking about here are moral rights. So we have already talked about section 14 that discuss the economic rights, basically from those rights through which an owner of copyright can commercialize his or her work. Now, special rights offer certain rights beyond the economic rights through which the author can protect their works and against things like which could hamper their reputation. So there is no money or commercialization involved. It is only related to the integrity of the work and their own reputation of the work and their reputation as an author also. So if somebody's work is distorted, people also think bad about the author as well. Now, there is one concept that you all need to understand, which is not there in the Bare Act directly and which is not there in any book. That is, the economic rights are offered to the owner of copyright. So, there, if the author has who is originally the owner also, so by default, I have written a book or I've made a movie, I'm the author of the work. I am also the owner of the work because by default, both the people are the same person. Now, if I decide to transfer my ownership, okay, to, for example, a publisher, and I transfer all my copyright to him that for whatever time period I have copyright, lifetime plus 60 years, that publisher will now own copyright. So now the publisher becomes the owner and I remain the author. Authorship can never change. Only the ownership can be changed, right? So now the author and the owner are two people. Now, the rights under Section 14, the economic rights, now can be exercised only by the publisher because he's the owner. Whoever is the owner of copyright can only exercise economic rights. Moral rights, on the other hand, the rights given under Section 57 of our Act, they are exercisable only by the author of the work. So, no matter if the author has retained ownership or has transferred the ownership, the moral rights will always vest in the author. They will never shift along with economic rights. So, the publisher will only have economic rights, and the author of the book will have moral rights. Also, one peculiar feature of moral rights are so the time period of copyright that we talk about, that I've been telling you guys since classes, that in literary works, the copyright of the work, the term of copyright is lifetime of the author, and the year the author dies, 60 years from the death of the author. So we say it's lifetime plus 60 years. This term of copyright is only for the economic rights. So only the rights that are provided under Section 14 can be exercised for this time period. Moral rights, on the other hand, don't have a time period. They are there in perpetuity. The effect of this is that it's not like you cannot insult or distort someone's work only for 60 years or lifetime. You cannot insult someone's work or attack their integrity throughout the uh, throughout your lifetime. So it is in perpetuity. It never gets exhausted. So the term of copyright that we talk about in any work, so we have different categories of works, right, that we've discussed, like literary works, then we have films, sound recordings, government works, etc. So there are separate sections for each work which prescribe their term of copyright. You have to keep in mind that this term, that wherever we say term of copyright, it only means economic rights. Moral rights never get exhausted. So if you get a question, so this is a very common question in competitive exams. So if any of you plan to take CLAD for PG, so this question like comes a lot, that what is the time period of moral rights? So there is no time period of moral rights. They're always there. So we'll just quickly read section 57 first, and then we'll start with the PPT and cases. So I'll read section 57, author's special right. Independently of the author's copyright, and even after the assignment either wholly or partially of the said copyright. Meaning, assignment means you are transferring the ownership. It basically has the effect of selling your copyright. Licensing is different. So after I think in the next class or today only, if we can, we will begin with the topic of assignment of copyright. So I'll explain to you the difference with licensing and what assignment actually is. So for now, I'm telling you, it means you are basically selling your copyright. You don't retain anything if you are assigning it wholly. If you're assigning it partially, it means you are only selling the rights of, say, of reproduction, but you have retained all other rights that are there under Section 14. But only the right of reproduction, you are transferring the copyright to, say, film producer. Either wholly or partially of the said copyright, the author of the work shall have the right. See, when we say the word shall, it means it is a mandatory provision. It does not say may. So, in some sections, the legislature has used the term may. That means it is optional, which means it is the discretion of the copyright board, or it is the discretion of the court to grant to that to grant that particular right. When we say shall, it means it is a mandatory right that every author will get. And they also haven't used the word owner anywhere, because moral rights are with the author. If he's the owner, well and good. If he's not the owner, it doesn't matter. So in the first line, they've used the term author. So please underline author and underline assignment. A, to claim authorship of the work. If you remember, I had discussed an example that I have transferred my ownership, the same example that I took right now, that I am an author of a book and I've transferred my copyright to a publisher for perpetuity. So, like, I have retained no right. So, it is a assignment which is done wholly and not partially. In such cases, the publisher, even though he can exercise any of the rights under Section 14, one thing that he cannot do is claim authorship of the work. He has to, in every copy that he is selling, give me credits that so and so person has written the book, and we don't claim authorship. We are owners of copyright. So there are disclaimers in every book. If you see carefully in the first or the second page, there are disclaimers which tell the readers or the audience or the public, like, who is the owner and who is the author. So the first right is to claim authorship of the book. So the author can always claim authorship of the book, no matter if he is or is not the owner of copyright. This is also called the right of attribution or paternity rights, that you can only claim that you are the parent of the book and nobody else has written the book. They can claim reproduction, they can claim adaptation, translation, they can say they are owners of copyright, but they can never say that they have also created the work or they are the authors of the work. So you can write in the Bare Act only, in front of A, right of attribution or paternity right. The second moral right is to restrain or claim damages. So you can file for an injunction or claim damages in respect of any distortion, mutilation, modification, or other act in relation to the said work, if such distortion, mutilation, modification, or other act would be prejudicial to his honor or reputation. So anything which could hamper the integrity of the work, which could hamper your reputation as an author or of your work, you can restrict somebody from doing such things. It could be anything, it could be a minor change, it could be major mutilation or distortion, it could be anything that is not provided in the act, because it has to be subjective. What might hamper, what might be the meaning of hampering integrity for one person might be different for another. This is called the right of integrity. So you can write in front of B, it is the right of integrity. India offers two moral rights only: right of attribution or paternity right, and right of integrity. Provided that the author shall not have any right to restrain or claim damages in respect of any adaptation of a computer program to which Section 52 applies. See, 52 deals with exceptions to infringement. This we will do later, so we will come to the proviso later. Explanation: failure to display a work or to display it to the satisfaction of the author shall not be deemed to be an infringement of the rights conferred by this section. For example, I am a painter. I have assigned my copyright, say, to an owner of an art gallery. Okay, and I have, like, totally assigned copyright. I have no copyright left. So he always, like every week, he displays my paintings, and whatever is sold, I get royalty out of it. But the main chunk goes to the art gallery owner. Now, I can obviously claim infringement of moral rights anytime I feel that my work is not being given respect, or it is, or the art gallery person is claiming that he has made the painting. So either he's infringing my right to paternity or integrity. I can file a suit for infringement of moral rights. What I cannot do is I cannot tell him to, like if he's displaying my painting 3 days in a week, I cannot tell him that you have to display it 7 days of the week, otherwise you are hampering my integrity. So if you read the explanation again, failure to display a work, like if the artist, if the art gallery is not able to display my work, or even if he's refusing to display my work, or he's not displaying it to my satisfaction, that is again subjective. The author shall not be deemed to be an infringement of rights conferred by this section. This means this is not an infringement of right of integrity. So failure to display to your satisfaction is not an infringement of integrity. It has to spoil the work or hamper the integrity of the work for it to be for it to constitute an infringement. Second subsection, the right conferred upon an author of a work by subsection 1 may be exercised by the legal representatives of the author. Why this specially has been mentioned is because the term of copyright is usually 60 years plus lifetime. So even after this period is over, or after the author has died, moral rights are there, right? They're permanent in nature. So it's not like the author is going to live forever, but moral rights are forever. So even after the author dies, to uphold the moral rights, the legal representatives can also file infringement suits. This is specially mentioned because there is no time period for moral rights. Now we will quickly go through the PPT, and we will go through the cases. Just a moment. You'll understand it better. Moral rights of authors, section 57. So we've read the section. What are moral rights? In addition to economic rights, the Copyright Act also protects moral rights of authors. They are provided in section 57 of the Act. The idea behind these rights are that an author's work reflects the personality of the creator. The moral rights are exceptions to the general rule that after an author has assigned his rights to any other person, only the other person will be able to sue in respect of infringements. This means the author will still have the right to claim moral rights in the work even after transfer of ownership of copyright. So this is clear. Even if the ownership of copyright changes, since authorship remains the same, moral rights are only with the author. See, whenever you are writing about moral rights in any of your papers, never mention owner. Always use the term author, because the owner can also be a different person, and there you will be totally going against the provision. So always use the word author for moral rights, and where we are talking about section 14 rights, the economic rights, you always use the term owner. Section 57. The section of moral rights was added by the 1995 amendment to the Copyright Act. We've already read the section, so I'm not repeating it. Now, the first landmark case that was decided on moral rights was Amarnath Sehgal versus Union of India. Now let's read the facts first. Amarnath Sehgal was a renowned artist and sculptor. He had designed a mural in the lobby of Vigyan Bhavan, the most prominent convention hall in Delhi. The sculpture took 5 years to be made, and a lot of hard work and intellect went into it. Now, he's clearly the author and owner of copyright in the sculpture, artistic work. However, in 1979, the sculpture was taken down and put in the storeroom without notice or permission of Amarnath Sehgal. When he came to know about this mistreatment, he asked the government authorities to put it back, but there was no action taken. He then filed a petition before the Delhi High Court under Section 57 of the Act, praying for apology from the defendants, permanent injunction restraining them from distorting, mutilating, or damaging the plaintiff's work, and damages of rupees 50 lakhs. The court held that the plaintiff has a cause to maintain an action under Section 57 of the Act, even though the copyright in the mural stands vested in the defendants. This is because the sculptor or the artist is still the author and he can only sue in respect of moral rights. He only has a case under Section 57. He can, in no case, even if there is an infringement, can in no case sue in respect of any economic right, because that only now the government can do. It was further held that the defendants have not only violated the plaintiff's moral right of integrity in the mural, but have also violated the integrity of the work in relation to the cultural heritage of the nation. The court ordered the defendants to return to the plaintiff the remnants of the mural permanently, with no rights vesting with the defendants henceforth, and ordered the defendants to pay damages with costs. So the court revoked the copyright, which was transferred to the government. The copyright was removed. They had no rights anymore, and they were also ordered to pay damages. So you see how moral rights are, how important moral rights are. They're not just anything which is there in the book and not implemented. The copyright was also revoked, and they were also instructed to pay damages of 50 lakh rupees, which is a lot considering that there is no money involved. It is only moral right infringement. So moral rights in copyright holds a lot of importance. The court also held in the material world, laws are geared to protect the right to equitable remuneration. But life is beyond the material, it is temporal as well. Many of us believe in soul. Moral rights of the author are the soul of his works. The author has a right to preserve, protect, and nurture his creations through his moral rights. See, if an artist is taking 5 years to create a work, it is a very long time to create an artistic work, as long as, like, it was, I think, a life size sculpture. Considering that if somebody puts it in the storeroom without telling you, without asking you, so it is actually harming the integrity of the work, because somebody has put in a lot of hard work and even money goes into the preparation of the sculpture. Just because you're the owners of copyright doesn't mean you can do anything with the work. So moral rights can be upheld. Now, the two kinds of moral rights that India grants are right of paternity and right of integrity. Right of paternity, it is also called the right of attribution. It implies that the author has the right to claim authorship of his work and can prevent all others from claiming authorship of the work. So you can prevent others from claiming that they have created the work. The author can also demand that his or her name should appear in all copies of the work, so he can claim that he should be given credit in all copies at the appropriate place. He can also prevent others from using his or her name in their works. So we can also say that nobody else uh, writes their name in the book. So many a times we don't even know that if the author of the book even has copyright. So it could be like the publisher has copyright, but the cover of the book and the inside of the book is always written with the author's name. And that's how we recognize the books or associate with the books. So we don't say we want the book on IPR. We say we want VK Huja's book or we want Kalyan's book. So we associate the book with the author. We don't know if these two particular authors also own copyrights. They could be transferred. But since authorship is very important, the right of paternity is very important, it is because of the moral rights that the publisher would write the author's name on the cover. Right of integrity. This implies that an author has the right to prevent distortion, mutilation, alteration, or any other modification of the work which will be prejudicial to his honor or reputation. This right is very important when a license or an assignment has been granted to adapt or alter the work in some way. So, adapting a novel into a play. The courts will decide the difference between adaptation and distortion. So, I have licensed or assigned my book to be adapted into a movie. Now, while this adaptation is taking place, in the process of this adaptation, if the producer of the film is distorting my work, or like if he's suppose making an obscene film out of my book, he's harming my right of integrity. If he's changing the climax in such a substantial way that the readers think that I cannot write good climaxes. This is harming my reputation. I can stop them. So I, as an author of the book, will have a lot of rights or will a lot of say in how my book is adapted. If anything is going against my consent, which is harming the integrity of my book, I can sue them for moral rights. Now, as I've written, the courts will decide the difference between adaptation and distortion. So, this is because a very subjective matter. When we have two works in front of us, the court will only decide whether there is substantial copying or subconscious copying. Whatever doctrines we did in the beginning come to play in such cases. Manu Bhandari versus Kala Vikas Pictures Limited. This is also an important case. Manu Bhandari was a novelist. She wrote a novel named Aapka Bunty and had copyright in her work, including the right to make a cinematograph film with respect to the work. Making a cinematograph film with respect to your work is one of the economic rights that are granted under Section 14. In April 1983, she assigned her cinematograph rights to Kala Vikas Pictures Limited for a consideration of 15,000. So assignment of the rights of particular rights, that is adaptation into a film, were transferred. So this was a partial assignment. It was decided that the script writer would be allowed to make certain modifications to make a successful film version. However, differences started to arise between the parties. Manu Bhandari, the author, filed a petition on the ground that the film has distorted her work, that is the novel, and the same is prejudicial to her reputation. What were the objections that were raised by Manu Bhandari? Some sentences distorted the image of the character and were not necessary, so the court ordered deletion of those sentences. So Manu Bhandari says that some of the um, like dialogues of certain characters were not appropriate and they were not also necessary for making a better film. Still, they were there, so the court ordered deletion of those sentences. Next objection was related to the end of the film. In the novel, the child was admitted in the hostel by his father, while in the film, it was shown that the child died of starvation after he ran away from home. Now, these are pretty different things. That a parent is being responsible enough to admit his or her child into a hostel if he's not able to take care of him or her. On the other hand, the film showed that he was so like distressed at home that he ran and he died of starvation, which is a very dark ending. The court felt that the manner in which the death was depicted were too crude, brash, and nauseating, and that the scene where dead bodies were spread in the morgue should be deleted from the film. So, certain objections of Manu Bhandari that she claimed were distorting the reputation of the work were deleted. So, now are moral rights clear? That's it for moral rights. Are there any doubts or any area of confusion? Please ask me. Otherwise, I'll move on to the next topic.
Ma'am,
Yeah, tell me.
ma'am, regarding that Amarnath Sehgal versus Union of India,
Yeah.
ma'am, in section 57, under explanation, you mentioned that failure of display a work or to display it to the satisfaction of the author shall not deem to be an infringement. They did not
Yeah.
display over there, right? So,
See, not displaying was not the problem. The problem was that they had like thrown it in the storeroom. And like in if you go into the detailing of the facts, if you read the judgment, they have also mentioned, the plaintiff has also mentioned that the work had started to the sculpture had started to break and the outer covering, the paint had started to rip off. So the work was being disrespected by being kept in the storeroom. So if somebody has spent 5 years on something, it cannot be just thrown away in the storeroom. The point was not that it was not being displayed. He also said in the case that had the people been responsible enough, that they had packed the sculpture in a very proper manner, that even if not being displayed, it is safe and it is not being spoiled, he would not have filed the case. It is just that because the work was spoiled and it was like all broken and everything, so that's what the cause of action was.
okay, ma'am.
Yeah. Are there more doubts or should I begin? Okay. So our next topic is term of copyright, which is very short because the term is the same for all works. But I've prepared a PPT so that you guys can still like go through it whenever you want to. Take out section 22 of the Act, please. So chapter 5, which starts with section 22, talks about the term of copyright. The first category of works that is dealt with under the chapter is section 22, term of copyright in published literary, dramatic, musical, and artistic works. This section provides that copyright shall subsist in any. Now you can close the barracks, just focus on the PPT. This section provides that copyright shall subsist in any literary, dramatic, musical, or artistic work published within the lifetime of the author for 60 years, beginning of the calendar year, next following the year in which the author dies. In simple words, if the author dies in 2021, from January 2022, 60 years will start. So, lifetime plus 60 years is the term of copyright in these four works only. Prior to the amendment, the term of copyright for 50 years was 50 years from death of author. The reason for extending was to protect the work of Guru Rabindranath Tagore, the copyright in which was due to expire in 1991. So the immediate cause for increasing the time period of copyright was to protect one of the works of Rabindranath Tagore. But even if this was not done, to comply with TRIPS, India anyway had to increase the term to lifetime plus 60 years because of TRIPS. Section 23 talks about anonymous or pseudonymous works wherein the author is not known. Copyright in anonymous and pseudonymous works subsists until 60 years from the beginning of the calendar year following the year in which the work is first published. However, if the identity of the author is disclosed before the expiry of the said period, copyright shall subsist for lifetime plus 60 years. This basically means if there is a work of which the author is not known, or the author has deliberately not come forward claiming authorship. In such works, from the date of publication, the term of copyright will be 60 years from date of publication. So there is no question of lifetime because we don't know the author. However, if before the expiry of the 60 years, the author reveals his identity or the identity comes to light before 60 years is over, then a fresh term of copyright will begin. That will be what we like what is provided under section 22, lifetime plus 60 years. Now, a very big loophole here is if the author is very smart, what he can easily do is he can be an anonymous author just as his 60 years are about to end, he can reveal his identity. So he will get 60 years in as an anonymous author, and before his time period has ended, he will reveal his identity. So a fresh copyright period will start. Then he will again get a term. He will basically get a triple term because then he'll get a lifetime plus 60 years. So this is actually a problematic section also if you like notice, because this is also very unfair for other people who are getting just lifetime plus 60 years. So granting an extra 60 years in certain cases is very unfair, but it has not been amended since many years. So yeah. Section 24 deals with posthumous works wherein the author has passed away. Posthumous works are those which are not published during the lifetime of the author. So when it's published, the author is no more. In case of a literary, dramatic, or musical work, or an engraving in which copyright subsists at the date of death of the author, and in case of joint authorship, date of death of the author who dies last. So both authors have died, but the one who dies last, we take that date into consideration. But the work has not been published before that date. Copyright shall subsist until 60 years from the date when the work is first published. How can the work be published if a person has died? Is through family members, legal representatives, or if the author before dying had given this responsibility to someone. So the lifetime of the author or the death of the author is no uh, parameter. So we will see the date of publication for such works. Here, published means performed in public, and if it's a sound recording is made with respect to the work, it has been sold or offered for sale to the public. Now, don't get confused when things like when there are very particular works mentioned. Like here, they have in published mentioned only sound recordings. So don't get confused that why other works are not mentioned. Copyright Act has been very specific in certain places for a reason, and in certain places without any reason. So like even the IPR intellects are like fail to understand why they've done this. So please don't overthink on this. Just read whatever's there in the PAIR Act, because we anyway can't do anything about it. I will discuss all the loopholes with you, but so you can keep them in mind just for your knowledge. Section 26 talks about films, which is also 60 years from date of publication. Sound recordings are also 60 years from the date of publication. Government work, 60 years. Public undertaking, 60 years. International organization, 60 years. So all works are 60 years from date of publication. Only in the first category of works, it is lifetime plus 60 years. Otherwise, they're all 60 years from date of publication. Now you have to remember it's 60 years from publication, not 60 years from creation. You don't know the if a work when a work was created unless it comes in front of you. So we see the date of publication. Is there any doubt in term of copyright? This is it. This is a very small topic, so it's over. If there are any doubts, please ask me.
Ma'am, once can
Yeah.
you explain the section 23, like the summary?
Section 23 deals with anonymous and pseudonymous works, wherein the author of the work is not known. So this basically means that if an author of the work is not known and we just know that there is a work that exists in the market, it cannot be put into public domain. For this purpose, we grant copyright for 60 years from the date of publication. So because we don't have an author, we cannot calculate the lifetime. So we can't grant a protection under section 22. It could be a literary or artistic work, but because the author is not known, lifetime cannot be calculated. So we give 60 years from date of publication whenever the work is published. If the identity of the author is revealed before 60 years are over, so before publication, after publication 60 years are over, the author comes forward with his identity, or it is coincidentally revealed by someone, or it comes to light because it was not deliberate, the hiding of identity was not deliberate and it comes to light, then a fresh term of copyright will begin from the date when identity is revealed, lifetime plus 60 years. So then we accord the protection under 22 because now we know the author. So it's no longer an anonymous work. So we go beyond, so we go out of the circumference of 23 and we go to 22. So now the fresh term will begin, a lifetime plus 60 years. So I was discussing that this is a loophole in the section because if somebody deliberately hides their identity, enjoys the copyright in the work for 60 years, and then they reveal their identity just before the 60 years are about to end. So he will get a triple term because then he would have already enjoyed 60 years, and now he will get a fresh term of lifetime plus 60 years. So this is an unfair and like loophole provision. So this was what we discussed. Now is it clear?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. So the next important topic that we have to cover is assignment of copyright. Now, don't get confused between assignment and licensing. Assignment is you are selling the rights in your copyright. Licensing you're not selling your rights. So assignment has the same effect of as sale. So it's only the terminology that is different. We don't ever say sale of copyright or anything. We say assignment of copyright. In assignment, if it is a whole assignment, the owner does not retain any right. Okay, and it is not even revocable. As, like in certain cases, obviously there can be a contract that the assignment is only for a period of say 5 years or 10 years. So only for those 5 years or 10 years you cannot exercise any rights, and after that you can. Licensing, on the other hand, is revocable. You can like license some of the rights, but you still retain the copyright. So when we say that we have a licensee, it doesn't mean that he becomes the owner. But when we say that we have an assignee, that means that assignee has the ownership of copyright for the set time period. So ownership of copyright is the differentiating factor between assignment and license. So section 18, 19, 19A and 20, they deal with the of the Copyright Act. They deal with the assignment of copyright. Now I have the provisions. If you go through the provisions, get very confusing, the like language. So I have created bullet points in the PPT. So for this particular topic, you need not refer the Bare Act. Obviously, if you want to, you should, and if you can, you should. But this is just for like convenience. Nobody is entitled to copy, reproduce, publish, or sell an original writing, painting, dramatic production, sculpture, etc., without the permission of the creator. Now, this is our general rule that we have been studying in so many classes. Thus, the law provides a right to the owner of the copyright, which is the creator, to transfer the ownership of copyright to a third party. This is where the author and owner can become different people. The concept that I'm trying to explain in so many classes, by default, if the first paragraph is followed. But there can be an exception wherein the owner and the author are different people by way of transfer of copyright. This transfer can be in the form of assignment, licensing, or operation of law. What is an assignment? Assignment is a transfer of ownership of copyright wherein the author can transfer the ownership wholly or partially. In licensing, the ownership is not transferred, but only certain specific interests and rights are transferred. In assignment, the ownership itself is transferred. In case of failure to pay royalties to the licensee, the license can be revoked. Royalties by the licensee. But an assignment once made cannot be revoked. See, for example, I'll take the example of the book and the publisher again. So I'm the author and I've transferred the ownership of copyright to the publisher for 10 years only. For those 10 years, the publisher is the owner of copyright. He can only sue in respect of economic rights. Now, the deal between us was that whatever novels he'll sell, my novels that he'll sell, I will get a 20% royalty or from each copy for 10 years because the assignment is for 10 years. Now, if he fails to pay a royalty to me and there is a contract of assignment, I cannot revoke the assignment. But if the publisher was licensed the publishing rights from me, so I just licensed the rights and I retain the copyright. So he is not the owner of copyright, he is only my licensee and he is not paying royalty. Then I can revoke my license. So license is revocable in such cases. In the case of Video Master and Nishi Production, the Bombay High Court considered the issue whether assignment of video rights would include the right of satellite broadcast as well. So if I have assigned video rights to some person, would the right also include satellite broadcasting rights or not? So if the person is allowed to make a video of my work, can he also broadcast the work? The court agreed with the contentions of the defendant that there were different modes of communication to the public, like terrestrial television broadcasting, like Doordarshan, satellite broadcasting, and video TV. The owner of the film had separate copyright in all those modes and he could assign it to different persons. Thus, the satellite broadcast copyright of the film was a separate right of the owner, and the video copyright assigned would not include this. So they said that how you communicate a work to the public can be through various means. It could be through like cable TV, it could be through broadcasting, satellite broadcasting, and it could be through video TV. So these are different rights. See, an example of this could be I'm a producer of a film. I have just created a new film, and because of the pandemic, I can't release it in the theaters. So I can license or assign specific rights to different people who are who have a forte in their area. So I want the best of the best. So I assign the television broadcasting rights through the cable TV to a channel. I grant my satellite broadcasting rights to an OTT platform like Netflix, and I can grant my video TV rights to another channel who is excelling in video TV. So it's not like they that all these rights are the same. So they are separate rights and can be assigned to different people. So the question in the court was this: whether the rights are the same, and the court held that they're not. Now, the first section that deals with assignment of copyright is section 18. It lays down some provisions regarding assignment. The first one is the owner of copyright in an existing work or prospective owner of copyright in a future work may assign to any person the copyright. Future work means if I am in the process of writing a novel, but it's not yet complete, I know it will be completed in a year or say a year or two, I can assign my copyright. I can create a contract of assignment right now also when I'm still not completed with the work. That will be an assignment to a prospective owner in a future work. So it's not necessary that to create the assignment there has to be the work has to be completed. However, for the assignment to be enforceable or to come into effect, the work should be created. I cannot enforce an assignment contract if the work is not complete. Obviously, that's very it's very logical, so it's very obvious. But I can create a contract even before the work is complete. So that is called a future work. So the owner of copyright in an existing work or prospective owner of copyright in the future work. We are saying prospective because until the work is completed, we cannot call ourselves the owner because there is no work yet. So we are the prospective owners of our future works. May assign to any person the copyright either wholly or partially, generally or subject to limitations. So I can say that I am assigning the copyright, but you cannot use the assignment rights beyond the territory of, say, uh, Delhi, Rajasthan, and Jammu and Kashmir. So you can't go beyond these three states. So these are subject to limitations. Or I can also assign it generally without any limitations, either for the whole of copyright or any part thereof. Whole of copyright or part thereof is basically what wholly or partially means, that you can assign some rights or you can assign all the rights. The future work, the assignment will come into effect only when the work comes into existence. The work has to be complete for it to be assigned. So you can create the contract, but it will not come into effect unless the work is completed. In 2012, a new proviso was added to section 18, which says, no assignment shall be applied to any medium or mode of exploitation of the work which did not exist or was not in commercial use. Okay, this is a complicated proviso which needs a lot of explanation. So let's not get into this right now. We'll begin with this in the next class because we're anyway out of time. So if there are any doubts right now, please ask me. There are no doubts today. Okay, then I'll wind up the class and I'll see you at 3 o'clock. We have an extra class at 3 o'clock. So please be on.